Let me paint you a familiar picture, perhaps. You're sitting through a sprint planning session and the team is endlessly debating over whether it's a 3 or a 5. Sound familiar? Well, this is one of the quietest and most draining failures of Agile. So ritualistic. Everyone just leans forward, eyebrows furrowed, justifying why their number is more correct than somebody else's. And yet, under the surface, nobody really knows what a 3 is, and everyone's too afraid to ask. The conversation just becomes like a bit of acting. It becomes like being handed a jigsaw puzzle with no picture on the box. You're just guessing, everyone knows you're guessing, but the ceremony demands that level of confidence. It's a 3. No, clearly, this is a 5. This isn't a fringe problem. According to the State of Agile report, 36% of teams measure success by velocity. That means you're steering by story points rather than outcome. So it's a system that rewards quantity over clarity. And you can see, and you may have experienced, why that's not a good thing. So today I want to walk you through the top 5 reasons why estimating work will actually cause a collapse of your teams without you realizing, and why there's a simpler, calmer, and much clearer approach that you can use to turn sprint planning from a guessing contest into genuine alignment of all members of your team. So let's jump into the top 5 reasons then why estimation doesn't work. So the first and the most fundamental reason is that story points shifts everyone's attention away from the outcomes and towards velocity. Teams will start to behave as if the goal of the sprint is to complete a certain number of points rather than create something of value. McKinsey found that many Agile teams treat planning like filling a 2-week container, focusing on speed instead of outcomes. And I've lived through this. I've had teams which have spent an entire planning session arguing whether a feature was a 5 or 8. Intense, strangely emotional debate. Ultimately, meaningless. If a team measures its worth via story points, they optimize for completing points. They start to slice stories thinner, they start to avoid complex work, and they start to chase predictable pieces rather than impactful ones. And as a result of this, velocity will definitely increase, but the value delivered will decrease. And this is something that is very subtle and no one will notice until that product falls behind user needs. So the key thing here is that story points don't tell you whether you built the right thing. All right, reason number 2, the second silent failure, is that estimation pretends that uncertainty doesn't exist. On one debt management system, we found that tasks with deep unknowns like legacy interactions, regulatory conditions, data complexity, never fit neatly into any point size. We label something as 3 based on optimism, only to discover halfway through the sprint that it was actually close to 13, or we don't even know enough to even estimate this. But the structure of story points discourages admitting that teams will feel pressure to assign a number rather than say, we don't actually know. So what we've done there is you've taken uncertainty and you've made it something to hide rather than to illuminate. This turns the sprint into a bit of a gamble. And this is very detrimental and is something to avoid. In an AI research project I led, we had a large amount of research that needed to take place. So research requires exploration, discovery, trial, and error. The very opposite of fixed size estimation. If I'd pushed through to estimate anyway, we would have had wildly inaccurate sprints, unnecessary stress, and work that constantly slipped. I didn't, and I made sure I used the right system, which I'll talk about towards the end of this video. Estimation will collapse under uncertainty because it was never built to deal with uncertainty. Now, the third reason estimation fails is emotional rather than structural. It drains morale. Teams will rarely talk about this openly, but I've seen this in every sector. When estimates are missed, people will feel judged, as if the point assignment was a promise and not just a guess. Managers will often use point totals to compare team performance. Stakeholders will treat missing estimates as broken commitments. And this means the estimation session itself becomes a bit of a psychological battlefield. In one product team, people grew visibly anxious whenever a senior developer declared something as an easy 3. Others were reluctant to admit that this was not something they understood. A simple estimate carries many status implications. Over time, estimation becomes less collaborative and more hierarchical. One Agile coach put it perfectly. Teams everywhere are very frustrated with games around estimation, and many are abandoning points altogether because points aren't just numbers, they're judgments. And nothing will destroy trust faster than a tool which accidentally becomes a weapon. The fourth reason traditional estimation breaks teams is that the points disguise the real problem, that the work isn't ready. When a team is debating whether something is a 3 or a 5, what they're really saying is, we don't really understand this well enough to confirm. But instead of addressing that point, the system encourages teams to assign a number anyway. One of the projects I worked in, the reason why our estimates were slipping wasn't miscalculation, it was ambiguity. Requirements were not clear, dependencies weren't resolved, unknowns were everywhere. The point system didn't surface that. It just smoothed over it with certain ambiguity by forcing us to pick a number. The final reason that estimation breaks teams is this: teams do not need numbers, they need clarity. And this is where I can introduce the solution. This is where Lunar Logic comes in. Lunar Logic is different to traditional estimation because instead of debating numbers, it asks just one question: is this work clear, small, and truly ready? If it's yes, we say it's a 1. If it's no, then it means it's either too big or unknown. Simple as that. Yeah. Is the work clear, small, and truly ready? If it is, it's assigned a point of 1. If it's not, we say it's either too big or unknown. And that's a distinction that really breaks things down. And if it's too big, the team knows we have to split it. If it's unknown, the team will know we need to run a spike to eliminate it. If it's a 1, the team can be confident that we can fit it into the sprint. There's no debating Fibonacci series. There's no pretending we can assign accuracy to ambiguity. There's no emotional fallout when someone misestimates. There's just clarity. And it turns planning into what it's always meant to be: a conversation about readiness, not a conversation about prediction. And this process naturally creates predictability over time. Teams learn how many 1s they can complete in a sprint. They don't need to chase velocity. They simply count finished, ready pieces of work. That's how you restore the flow, the morale, and that's how you replace guesswork with understanding. So really, teams do not need better numbers. They need better conversations. And Lunar Logic works because it treats estimation as a moment of truth-telling rather than prediction. It forces that clarity, exposes any ambiguity, protects morale, and it aligns teams with outcomes. It brings sprint planning to where it needs to be: a collaborative act of preparing work and not quantifying work. I'm putting together another video on Lunar Logic and how that shows you how to practically apply it to a project, step-by-step walkthrough. Look out for it on my channel soon. If this video helps shift your thinking about estimation, hit like and subscribe for more deep dives into delivery leadership. And tell me in the comments, what estimation struggles have you seen with your teams? What would have happened if you stopped guessing and started to illuminate the work instead? Thanks for watching, and as always, stay agile.